Hey guys, it's me, Miss Lily, obviously. Can't really see you, but it is good to be communicating with some of you guys again. Um, so I have posted my office hours. I will be having office hours, which just means that you can join a Google Meet link that I'll post every day from about 10:30 to roughly 12 o'clock. And that would be mostly just for you to ask me questions and whatnot. I'm not going to have like a whole classroom or lesson that's going to be on Google Meet. It's more just going to be a way for you to communicate with me and ask questions that you're kind of confused on. I'm going to try to be as descriptive as I can with videos like this, along with, different, things that I'll upload and whatnot. So, um, the first thing we're mostly going to be working on this week is kind of reviewing some of the stuff you did over your spring break packet. I know it was a good amount of work. It was supposed to be 3 weeks worth of work, but I know it's kind of hard to understand everything when you just had to read about it. And I know some of you guys had access to the video resources that they weren't assignments, but they were just to help. But it's still probably better if I at least explain it to you. That's what we would normally do in class anyways, especially on some of these topics. These are some pretty big topics. I told you the Constitution is by far probably our most useful unit, and we didn't really get to round it out and finish it out, and especially in sixth period, we didn't even get through a lot of those court cases. I think you have a good understanding of what the Bill of Rights are, just maybe not so much getting to do the fun part of it, and I'm sorry you missed out on that. But another important part is what we didn't get to in those, what rights you have based on the Bill of Rights, but we didn't get to really talk about your responsibilities and your duties as American citizens. And I would arguably say that's just as important as knowing your rights, because all of you, well, you're citizens, I'm pretty sure all of you are citizens, but you're citizens, you're going to be 18 here in just a few short years, and some of these responsibilities that American citizens have, you're going to need to know about them. So, and taxation. Everybody's got to pay taxes. There are taxes that you guys currently pay right now. And then there's ones that won't kind of hit until you maybe buy a house or you turn 18, or when you get your first job. So those are what this video is going to concentrate on. It's pretty much over lessons 1 and 2 that we talked about. So just bear with me. We've got like a PowerPoint that I'll kind of be referring to as we go through some of these things. And just hopefully you get a little better understanding of both taxation and then your responsibilities as a citizen. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and get right to it then once the PowerPoint actually loads. And here we go. So citizenship and taxation. So the first thing that they went over in the reading was what citizenship was. So when it comes to citizenship, and when I say it, I assume most of you are citizens, is because most of us fall under one of these 3 situations. So you automatically, when you are born on American soil, you are a U.S. citizen. That it actually doesn't even matter if both of your parents are not citizens, legal citizens. If you were born here, you do have citizenship, even if your parents do not. So American soil, we kind of talked about this when we talked about a natural born citizen you must be natural born in order to go off to be president, that just the 50 states of America don't count as America. Like any military base on foreign land is still considered American soil. Any of our territories, Puerto Rico is a major territory that I know a lot of us know about, but we also got Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, and then, of course, any of these military bases that are in any country. Those would all be considered American soil. So if you were born on American soil, you automatically have that citizenship. Another way to get citizenship would be that one of your parents is American, already has citizenship. So those are kind of like guaranteed citizenship. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to take any type of test. You pop out and you are therefore an American citizen. Now you can get what you call dual citizenship if you wanted to have citizenship also in another country as well as America. That's possible as well. I'm not going to get into that. But that is kind of that guaranteed citizenship that you would have. Now, there's many cases where people are not born in America but want to come and live here for various reasons. In that case, there's a process that you have to go through if you actually want to obtain citizenship in the United States and be an American citizen, and have some of those rights and access to resources that a normal, I say normal, but a natural born citizen would have. So we call that process naturalization. And naturalization is just simply someone that wasn't born in America that wants to be a citizen of America, and it's that process that they have to go through before they're granted that citizenship. So the very first step with naturalization is you got to qualify. So in order to qualify to be a citizen in the United States, you do have to be at least 18 years old. You have had to live in the United States for at least 5 years. And of those 5 years, you actually need to prove that you were here in America for 30 months of that 5 years. So as long as you have a permanent residency in the United States for 5 years, you're going to be eligible. And the last requirement that you have to have is you do have to have an up-to-date and current green card. Green card is something I'm sure that you have heard of. It's mentioned oftentimes in TV shows and movies and whatnot. And what a green card simply is if you come here from another country, and whether it's just to work, or, to live with a family member for a little while, or you actually want to become a citizen, you can get what you call a green card. And that green card is almost kind of like temporary citizenship. So you're going to be extended a lot of the similar rights that a normal American citizen would have, but you are not going to have all those same guarantees. So a lot of green card holders, typically the ultimate goal will be naturalization to become a citizen. But how a green card basically works is it's not nearly as extensive of a process of actually becoming a citizen, but you get your background check, you fill out an application, you have like this short interview process, and you'd be issued this green card that basically expires after 10 years. So it's not like you've lived here for the 5 years and then your green card's done. You have to become a citizen or not and make the decision. You do have that 10 years and you can reapply, to get another, maybe an extension, another stint of, green card status. So ultimately those are the things that you have to have before you can move on, and actually apply for citizenship. And that process, and I'm really watering down the process, but essentially, the very first thing that you do is you're going to complete an application that's going to give your employment history, right? If you've been here for 5 years, what have you been doing? Some background information on you. If you have a family, what are those family members? Who are those family members? A little bit of information about them. And then criminal activity, right? You let them know anything in your criminal past. There's going to be a background check as well, so it'd be better for you not to lie. Once you've filled out that application, move on to the next step where you actually are photographed and fingerprinted. And then you will schedule an interview. Now, a lot of times we know and we've heard that we have to take a citizenship test in order to gain that citizenship if you are a natural born citizen. But it's not as simple as you just go to a room and take a test. It is actually going to be a whole interview process. I guess kind of like a job interview where you're going to take these tests that they've deemed what they feel is necessary to gain citizenship if you're from a different country. And one of those tests is that citizenship test. But before you get to that citizenship test, you do need to show that you have a basic understanding of English. This is something that you wouldn't have to do for a green card, but as far as citizenship goes, this is a process that you'd have to go through. So you would take a speaking, reading, and writing test. Now, this is nothing like the state test that you guys take. This is very, very basic skills that they feel are needed in everyday life. I think I read that as far as the reading test goes, you just have to correctly read one of the 3 lines that you're given. So to be able to pass it. So it's not a super extensive test, but they want you to at least have the basics and show that you have been attempting to be able to. I mean, a lot of things are in English in this country. Now, there are going to be exceptions to this test. If you have a disability, like a learning disability, they'll make exceptions because, even if you were born and immersed in the English language, you maybe wouldn't do well on this test because of that learning disability. So there are exceptions for that, to where, it's not a super stringent, difficult thing. Yes, you have to prepare for it. Yes, you have to study and whatnot. But I don't want you to think that they're taking a, state test. And then the final, once you've gotten through those first 3 tests, then you will take a citizenship test. And that's basically just 10 questions over a mixture of American history and the Constitution. It's going to be 10 questions, and you have to get 6 of them correct in order to pass that portion of the test. So it's a 60%. It's not like, you have to be an expert at American history. And I know 10 questions doesn't seem like a lot, but there is like a bank of questions this big that they choose from. So you don't know what 10 questions you're going to get. Therefore, you do see people really stress about this test and really trying to learn all that information. And it is interesting. I've had 4th period take the test or take the practice exam. They have practice materials and whatnot. And that's something I'm going to have you guys do as well, where you will take a practice citizenship test and let us know what your score was. Because if you get below a 60%, well, good thing you were born here then, right? No, I'm just kidding. All right. And then the very last thing, once you get through all that interview process, and if you can fail it, I believe it's up to 2 times. And then you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can, do the process over again. But let's say you pass first time flying colors. The last thing you would do is you'd go to the court and you'd actually take the oath of allegiance, not the oath of office. That's what the president does, but the oath of allegiance to the United States, in front of a judge to kind of show, hey, I'm going to be loyal. This is, a country that I want to be a part of and all that. So once all those things are completed, you would be issued citizenship. And yes, you were naturalized, so you weren't a natural born citizen. You can't be president, but that's pretty much your only limitation. You're going to have all those same rights, responsibilities, and duties as anybody else that was born here. So the question then is, why be a citizen? What is the benefit of being a citizen of the United States? Well, we know that not all countries have the same rights that we have. It has, we talked about that all through our last unit. There are countries where maybe if you're a woman, you have very limited rights. Or even, in some countries, almost anybody doesn't have some of the rights that we often take for granted, like voting, or having a say in your government, and this freedom of speech and freedom of press and all of this. So there are benefits to being an American and the protection that we have compared to, and I know that's a really weird time to be talking about protection when we're in the middle of a pandemic and we all have to be in our houses. This is a very unique situation. But when it comes to wars and things like that, there are countries that are way less protected than we are. And some people seek out the United States for those reasons. So there are various reasons why people would want to become an American citizen. So then let's talk about what citizenship entails. We've talked about your rights, your Bill of Rights, your freedom of speech. I've probably said them 4 times already today. So we know we have those certain rights in this country, but along with those rights and those freedoms that we're guaranteed, we have responsibilities and we have duties. Now, there's a difference between a duty and a responsibility. And that's what these next couple of slides are going to talk about. So when it comes to a duty for an American citizen is a requirement. It is something that there can be a punishment if you don't fulfill that duty as an American citizen. And then there are going to be responsibilities. These are things that you should do. You're not going to go to jail or get a fine if you don't do them, but they are things that you should do as a functioning member of American society. So let's first look at what those duties are. So these are things that you've got to do, or there can be a punishment. And obviously people get away with some of these things on this list. But from a legal standpoint, if you're caught not fulfilling these duties, there can be a range of punishments from jail time to simple fines, or even just being, assigned community service. A lot of times fines and community service come along with each other. But so there's various things that can happen if you do not fill these responsibilities. So the first obvious one, and the one that a lot of you guys on your packet said was the most important, was you're expected to obey the law. And the punishments for this vary. We know that. There's, things as small as fines or the community service. And then people get the death penalty, depending on what state you live in. So you need to obey a law. As an American citizen, you're saying, I'm going to obey the law, because who wants to live in a lawless society? That's not a country I think anybody would really want to live in. Not to say that people don't break that, but at least there's order and there's consequences when people don't obey the law. So as an American citizen, it really is your duty to obey the law. Attending school until a certain age. In Ohio, that's 18. So you are required to go to school and be educated. And if you don't, there is a punishment. I know students that have gotten truancy letters. You're not usually the one that's fined. It usually goes to your guardian or your parent. If they're not getting you to school or they're not enrolling you in school and the state finds out, that's an issue. So that is a duty as a citizen, is to send your children to school. If you want to have people that vote on a government, you probably want them at least to have a basic understanding of the world, so that they can be functioning in society. And without school, that is difficult to accomplish. When it comes to paying taxes, that's not something that you just have a responsibility to do. You have to do that. If you do not pay your taxes, there's a punishment. Now, someone like me who's not making a lot of money, I'm probably not going to go to jail for not paying my taxes. I'm probably going to be heavily fined. But there's going to be a punishment for me not paying my taxes. Now, someone who is much wealthier might get way harsher charges, might actually see jail time for lying about their taxes, not filing their taxes, any of the above. So paying taxes is a duty that you have. And we'll talk about why we pay taxes here in a little bit. Then we talked about this, at least those of us that got through the court cases, that a duty you have as a male in this country is when you turn 18, you have to sign up for the special service, or what we know as the draft. And that's basically saying that if we get to a point in this country where we're in a war and we don't have the military capacity to protect ourselves, then we can enact this draft, and it is your duty to serve your country. And when we talked about this in class, I kind of gave you the rundown that it's much different. The military is much different than I think like the last time we had to enact the draft. We respect our military service members way more. It is seen as a good profession to be in. There's more benefits than there were in the past. Not that those people in the past didn't deserve it. It's just definitely we've seen a shift. But that is one of your duties. And if you don't, you will get a letter in the mail within a month of your 18th birthday, basically saying, hey, you got to sign up, or, this will happen. So that's a responsibility for males only. But it is a responsibility for you. Then jury duty. A lot of people think that this is just something you should do, or they try to ignore that they saw the letter in the mail. But jury duty is a duty. You have to show up. If you're summoned for jury duty, you have to show up if you're asked to, and then they'll decide if they need you or not. Or you might be able to say, hey, I've got this, this, and this. I'm not going to be able to serve, and they'll take that into consideration. But you must call. It happened to me this summer. I was summoned for the first time, and I just simply had to call a number between a certain time on a certain day. And when I called the first time, they said, we don't currently need your services. Call back at this date. And so then I made one more call on that date, and then they said, well, they said, we don't need you. So I didn't even have to go to the court. I didn't even have to show up. I didn't have to go through the process of being selected as a juror, but it was my duty to call and make that call. There are some states that have a really hard time getting people to come and serve on their juries, and there's fines for that. I've seen states that will fine up to $2,000 for refusing to show up to jury duty. Now, these are for repeat offenders. These are people that have like ignored it multiple times. There's sometimes it can come with a sentence up to 5 days in jail. That's usually like last resort type of thing, or if the government really wants to, in that particular area, really wants to prove a point. But there is a consequence for not showing up for jury duty. So you must show up for jury duty. And that's important because I always think back to, if I was falsely accused of a crime or somebody committed a crime that affected me or my family, I would want people that are of my status, not people that have, been in politics their whole life and maybe know somebody that, knows somebody that committed the crime against me. I don't want one person making that decision or the same people just constantly making that decision. I want it to be of people that are like me. And that's what a juror of your peers is. And that's why you should show up. And then again, it's a duty. You have to. So, and then appearing in court. If you're accused of a crime, you didn't obey the law, or you allegedly didn't obey the law, it's your duty to show up to court. And if you don't, what happens? You get a warrant out for your arrest. So these are things you have to do as a citizen, or there is a consequence. That's different than a responsibility, in which these are things you should do. You live here, you benefit from a lot of the protections and the resources that we have here and the rights that you have. So some of these responsibilities, and there's tons, but these are some of the main ones, is you should be informed on not just issues around you, but around the country that affect the world. Most people say, this goes just to politics. It's not just politics, but politics is a big thing. You don't just go in blindly and vote for a president. You're not supposed to. That obviously happens, but you're supposed to be informed. You should know, not like a couple snippets of what they say, or who likes, or, your mom likes them, so you like them, or your dad likes them and you like them. You should know what they stand for, because that's ultimately the people that are representing you. So that's kind of a responsibility you have. Now, do you have to prove you do that when you show up to the polls? No, obviously you don't. But that is something that's a kind of a responsibility that you should take on yourself. Voting, that's something that you should do. Again, lots of countries out there that do not have the right to vote or have a say in their government, and you do. So why not exercise that right? And it's hard to complain about what the government's doing if you've never gone and submitted a ballot, right? So voting is a responsibility you have. Are you going to go to jail if you don't? No, but it's just something that you should do. You should be loyal to the country. And that's more going back to that treason. Remember, our founding fathers were like terrified of treason, people turning against us, doing the Benedict Arnold, being a double spy type of thing. So you shouldn't be trying to gain intel into the United States military and then go and tell the leaders of Russia, right? That would be treason. That would be betraying your country. So you should be loyal to the country in that way. You should testify as a witness if you've seen a crime happen, and you can be a witness in order for justice to be served. That's something that you should do. You don't have to, especially there are situations where that could affect your safety. And yeah, maybe it's not worth that. But for the most part, you should take that time to go to the courts and, give your interpretation of the events so that justice can be served. And then you should participate in your community. You don't have a set number of volunteer hours that you have to have, or community service hours that you have to have, like if you're a member of NJHS to be a citizen. But it's something that you should do. You should help out around the community. You should volunteer your time for a better cause, even if you're not getting paid for it, for every once in a while. It's things like that keep society going. We saw that after the tornadoes. We're seeing that literally right now. So that volunteering is going to be extremely important, and just being kind, respecting others in your community. You can completely disagree with some idiot that's on the street, but you don't have to make a riot out of it, right? You want to live in a world and embrace the community and your diversity, and it's kind of a responsibility. Now, do you have the right to go and yell at that person and oppose their views? Absolutely, you have the right, but it doesn't mean you have to. But, to each their own. All right, so now the fun part, taxes. So when it comes to taxes, I always think it's funny because when we talk about the Revolutionary War, that's the main thing we pull out, right? Like, oh, the colonists were sick of being taxed. Like, so then why do we pay so many taxes today? The colonists weren't, and I try to reiterate this during the unit, and I hope that it was clear that they weren't necessarily mad that they were getting taxed. They were mad that they didn't have a say in what they're being taxed on. Ultimately, you have a say in this country on who gets voted into Congress to represent you and vote the way you think you should vote. So you have a say in what taxes are happening. And if we get to a point where taxes are just outrageous, then hey, we can, do something about it. But ultimately, we were mad at Britain because they weren't giving us a say. These taxes that we pay, and it's a lot. I'm sure it was kind of a wake up call, especially when you did the paycheck. When those of you that actually did it right, you pay a lot of taxes in this country. It just happens. So let's get right into it then. So why do governments have to collect taxes? Taxes are collected in every government. There's no way to function and have a functioning running society without having money to do it. So things that we take for granted, like, of course there should be roads, or we're super mad that there's a pothole in that road. Like, well, that's what the tax money's for. Tax money is going to be used to pay for roads, libraries, schools, airports, military, the protections that we feel we have, the weapons that we use, and, the aircrafts, all of that. Those are all funded by taxes. Your first responders, especially at the local level, firefighters, police officers, at the federal level, FBI, CIA, all of those are going to be funded through the taxes that we pay. Schools, welfare programs, this would be like food stamps. Right now, we are seeing our tax money being stretched big time with this whole COVID-19 outbreak or pandemic. We have a record number of people that are applying for unemployment because they're left without a job. It is those tax dollars that go into putting programs like that. Welfare programs are supposed to be temporary help for people that are facing hardships. And that's what's happening at a huge extent, like way bigger than it ever has. But that's what those taxes kind of help go towards. Now, we are trillions and trillions of dollars in debt already. So do our taxes cover all of the money that we spend as a nation or as a state or even probably as a city? No, they don't, but they help alleviate that a little bit, so that we're not just completely spending and spending and spending without bringing anything in. Although sometimes it does seem we do that way, but right now there's no choice. And then we also see taxes being used to hold businesses and services accountable. Our health departments, to make sure that restaurants can have sanitary conditions. The CDC, as they're trying to work on this vaccine and they're trying to work on ways to kind of slow this spread. All of that is being done through tax money. And then the FDA that approves a lot of the sanitation and things that we have with food. And there's a lot of other things that taxes go for, but those are kind of some of those heavy hitters. So we have to pay taxes, or you're just going to have to deal with, those potholes and those deteriorating roads, or even having roads at all, because there would be no way to have those things if we didn't collect taxes. And then there are so many different types of taxes. I'm just going to try to go through them quickly. Sales tax, that's a tax that you guys pay. I use the cost of a candy bar. I'll be honest, candy is food, but I'm not sure it might still be taxed because soda is still taxed. But let's say you're going in to buy a video game. Video game costs $50 on the price tag at the shop. Is that what you pay? No, it's not. You pay that tax on top of it. It's typically around between 6 and 7%. It changes based on the area that you're in. You're going to see higher sales tax in states that have a lot of vacationers. So your sales tax is probably going to be higher in Florida than it is in Ohio, where we don't get as much of those vacationers. But those sales tax monies are going to be split up, not just to the city that you are purchasing it from. Part of that sales tax is going to go towards maybe the county that that the product is being sold in. It's going to go to the state. It's going to go to the federal government. So it's all kind of divvied out. But sales tax is just something that we're going to pay on the goods that we have. There are exemptions. I kind of mentioned it earlier. Most food are exempted. So you're going to see at the grocery store, you're not going to pay a tax on your grapes and your apples. An excess tax. An excess tax is going to be a tax that's placed on certain items. You will not see, like on sales tax, you see what the sales tax is on the receipt. When it comes to an excess tax, that is not shown to you on the receipt because the seller is responsible for paying that tax. So it's kind of like a hidden tax. You don't see the tax, but believe me, the seller has taken that extra tax into consideration when it sets the price of that product. So you're going to see alcohol be sold if, there's a $5 tax on alcohol, and that's just a made up number. That just means they're going to charge $5 more for that alcohol than they would if they didn't have to pay the tax. So you're paying that tax. You just don't always know you're paying that tax. But alcohol, tobacco are typical items that usually have this excess tax on. And then you got income taxes. This one, many people are familiar with. Your income is what you bring in. It's not only from your job, though. I know at Right Credit Union, every year in January, we get our dividends, where they disperse the extra money that they had that year, and we get a little check. Well, I have to claim that as income. I didn't do anything to earn that, but it was an income based on, I guess, an investment that I made by being at a credit union. And then if you own properties, you own a house that you rent out, or you own an apartment complex and, you charge rent, that is considered income as well. And that's also going to be taxed. So how taxes work, and this is confusing. I'll be honest. I didn't know much about how tax brackets work and how they determine how much in taxes that you have to pay and whatnot until I was an adult. And it's kind of interesting how things work out, but they are progressive. The more money you make, the higher percentage you'll pay of your income into taxes. So obviously, the more money you make, the more taxes you make because you're making more money. But it's not only that, the more money you make, you start to jump up, and certain monies are going to be taxed at a higher percentage than they would if you didn't make as much money. So I'm going to kind of go through that with one of the activities that you guys do. Then Social Security and Medicare, these are taxes that are also taken out of your paycheck. This money is going to go towards these programs. Social Security is kind of like a retirement fund. When you reach a certain age, you've worked so many years, you're eligible to pull from Social Security. Most people also invest in other types of retirement because it's not like a huge portion of what your normal salary was that you'll get back. But it is money that you'll receive to kind of help you once you stop working, because you're, at a certain age and you shouldn't have to work, right? You paid your time. You did your time. Now you need to be able to live, even though you don't have a job that's bringing you in income. So that's what the Social Security is. And this is also, they pull from Social Security to also help people with disabilities qualify. So if you get injured on the job, you've heard people, oh, I got my disability check. That is coming from that same fund of Social Security. And then you got Medicare. This is the federal health program for seniors 65 or older. Most people get their health insurance through their employer. So when they retire and they're no longer working for that employer, they then need health care. And that's what the Medicare taxes are going to, is to help fund that health care program. Okay, so then how taxes work. Okay, so you guys probably remember this page from the packet that we did. What I like about this image, and I do want you to know that this is from 2012. So the taxes that we collect are going to be a little different than they were, or are today, sorry. But what this does a good job is kind of breaking down on how the government makes its money. We call it revenue. So it's the revenue that is made from collecting taxes. And it just kind of breaks it down to where you see the majority of the taxes that we collect as the federal government. So you should have, if you added up all the numbers that were there, you see that that's quite a chunk of money that the federal government is making off of the citizens. And I say making, but they're using that money. All that money gets put back into the country for the various reasons we talked about on why we collect taxes in the first place. But if we remember looking at the debt calculator that we have in the United States, our debt is clearly much higher than what you're seeing. So, yes, we don't care as much about balancing our budget. And like typically, if I make the amount of money that I make, which would be my revenue, is the amount of money that I can spend. And I can go into debt, but like there's a certain limit to it. And it seems like, especially in the crisis that we're in right now, we are going to go more and more into debt. But what taxes do is taxes alleviate the burden of that debt for the government a little bit to show that this is, we maybe spent X amount, but at least we have this tax money to kind of offset that. Clearly not perfect or a perfect system, but a lot of other countries are in debt too, so we just go with it. But the more interesting thing that probably will help you out more than anything is how they actually tax us. So you guys did this image, and a lot of us didn't do it right or correctly from me just kind of looking over and skimming through the ones of you that have had it turned in. But what this chart does a good job of, and again, it's from 2012, and these tax brackets have completely changed the numbers, and as it usually does between presidents and even between years. But this kind of shows you how the federal government decides how they're going to tax your income and how much in taxes you will actually owe. And as I think that this gives a decently good visual, you kind of have to have an understanding of taxes first. And a lot of you guys don't, and that's fine. I didn't in 8th grade either. I honestly didn't even in high school. And I'm sure you will go over this in financial literacy in high school. I'm hoping that they're going to teach it to you. But if not, maybe you'll kind of remember it here. But I found this really awesome website, this one here, that I thought was a good way of kind of showing how taxes are determined in the country, how much you will owe the federal government. But again, many of those taxes are taken out, taxes are taken directly out of my paycheck, to where I don't end up having to actually send a check to the government on April 14th, and it's been pushed back anyways. But this is just kind of an overview about how taxes actually work. So in this example, the person that we're talking about, let's say it's me. I make $84,000. I don't, but let's say I made $84,000. So these are the tax brackets, a lot like the chart that you guys saw here. This is basically saying that, from $0 to $9,700, you will pay 10% on that amount of money. And this is easy because 10% of $9,700 is just $970, right? So you would pay that on that portion of your income. Then you jump up any income that's over that $9,700 up until almost $40,000. That is going to be taxed at 12%. And then you can see it moves up to the 22 and then ultimately to the 24. But what a lot of people believe is okay, if I make $100,000, that means that I pay 24% in taxes. And that's not true. You will pay 24% of the income that you make, but only on the portion of money that is after that $84,000. And this is why I like this website. So you earn $84,000. That technically puts you right here at this 22% tax bracket. So a lot of people will just think my tax rate is 22%. On my income, I'll just pay 22%, but that is not actually correct. If you look at it almost like pockets, it really kind of explains things a little bit better. So that same $84,000 that you had at the beginning, it's basically breaking that money down. So that first portion of your income, you're going to pay this 10% on. But that's what I would pay. But once you get over that 9,700 threshold, that is when you're going to get into this 12% tax bracket, to where the next portion of your income that leads you up to the 39 will be taxed at 12%. And then anything that you make additionally, all the way up to your 84 that you have, is going to be taxed at that 22% rate. So how it breaks it down here, you'll pay 10% on that, 12% on that batch, and then here. And then it says, but what if you get a $1,000 raise and you get bumped up to the next tax bracket? That doesn't mean you're paying 24% on all of it. It simply means that on that extra $1,000, you will end up paying $240 on it. So that's that 24%, but it's only on that additional $1,000. So that kind of gives you an overview. So if we go back to the example that we used in ours, so this person under these rules made $97,000. So when I broke this down, that 10% they paid, because it was, if you remember, up to $8,700. $870 on the first 10% of their income. Then they pay about $4,000 on that next bracket that you see. Then they pay about $12,500 on the majority of their income, and then they just have a wee bit that they're paying that 28%, which ends up being about $1,870. So if I add all of that together, which I did right here, and you'll notice the first time, for some reason, I made it 11,000, and that was very wrong. But when you add all of this together, this person ends up paying $19,274 to the federal government on the income they made that year. And because 97,000 is pretty close to 100,000, we know that 28% of 100,000 is that 19. No, it's way less. So you don't actually pay that 28%. But that kind of gives you an idea of how the government decides on how much you actually will pay in taxes. Again, you're not going to have to worry about that for, a while, hopefully. That is kind of how taxes work. And I know I said simplified. It didn't really sound as simplified when I was explaining it, but it is a very complex topic. And again, I want your high school teachers to know that I at least touched on it. All right. The other taxes that you are responsible for paying as a citizen, I say responsible, but it's actually your duty. You have to do it. Property taxes. Property taxes are more at the local level. It's based on the value that they have deemed your house is worth. If you work or if you live in a nicer area, if you have a nice big city around you. So it depends on where you live, the property tax as well. And what that money does is it goes into your first responders, your police officers, firefighters, EMS. Your schools are funded this way. Whenever they talk about levies, these are going to be levies that are going to be kind of added on to that tax burden that you have as a property owner. Estate taxes, this isn't something that a lot of us will have to worry about. Hopefully some of you will have to worry about it because it's for very wealthy people, millionaires, multimillionaires, but it's an estate tax, and it's going to be taxes that you have to pay, or that is paid out of someone's estate, which is everything that they own when they pass away. And again, this is typically for more wealthy people. Most people don't have to worry about it, but hopefully some of you do. One day. We'll see. I make fun of everybody that's on TV when they cough and they have to justify oh, I promise I'm not sick. I don't have any other symptoms. It's I was just a sore throat. I just needed some water. But I haven't shown any symptoms. I'm perfectly fine. So I'm one of those people now. I know what it's like. All right. So hopefully that kind of helped you understand a little bit about those two topics. And if not, you can just ask me any questions during my office hours. So I will see you guys later. Hopefully some of you guys do join my office hours just to chat or say hi or check in. I really actually do miss seeing you guys. I do appreciate all the follows and likes on TikTok. I'm probably going to use that as an incentive for you guys in the future to do your work. And if I'm getting high participation, I might go ahead and throw a TikTok in there. Not because I enjoy doing them. That's definitely not the reason at all. So I will talk to you guys later, though.